Reading and writing fill in the blanks guided practice session. Let's begin. In this question type, this is similar to the earlier fill in the blanks question type that you practiced in the previous sessions. The only difference here is that for each blank here, you will have a drop down full of options and you have to pick one from those options. So instead of a common pool of words from which you have to drag and drop the blanks, here for each blank, you will have its own list of options in the form of a drop down. And from that, you have to select the correct word. Usually the text in this type of fill in the blanks, they are also a bit longer compared to the other fill in the blanks. Here's question number 1. So as you can see, after the blank in the brackets, you have 4 options. So you have to pick the one option from there. And as always, you can pause and try to attempt the question on your own. And when you've done it, you can come back and resume. So before we look at the correct answers, let's understand a bit, quickly skim through the text. So primary goal for this campaign, founded by something, lawyers including, was to identify individual prisoners of conscience around the world. Campaign for the release, campaign, public support, British law, Amnesty International. Fund was established, received donations. Nelson Mandela, governments try to deny. Sentenced to 5 years, etc., etc. Okay, so yeah, I just read till the point that I got some idea. So this is about an organization, a campaign, a social campaign that started, and I think related to the organization Amnesty International, and the work around securing the release of people who have been possibly imprisoned for unjust reasons. All right, now let's look at the first blank. The campaign had received enough public support to become a permanent organization and was Amnesty International. So the campaign received and was. So something was done, some action was taken on the organization and was charted, was categorized, was designed, was renamed. So I think renamed is correct because after that, the blank, you have the new name. So was renamed or was named Amnesty International. So from the earlier campaign, whatever the campaign was, its name, it was renamed to Amnesty International. The next blank, the name was later changed to the Prisoners of Conscience Appeal Fund and is now a separate and independent charity which provides relief and dash grants to prisoners of conscience in the UK and around the world. So what we need is a noun, relief and dash grant. So something which tells about the type of grants. So what goes when you have an and like this, you have to think what goes with it. So relief and fluctuating grants, relief and distinction, relief and dynamic, no, relief and rehabilitation. So rehabilitation means helping somebody return to a normal life. So to those prisoners who, if they were released and they gradually return, to help them return to a normal life, so rehabilitation grants. The next blank, governments conversely tend to deny that the specific prisoners identified by Amnesty International are in fact being held on the grounds Amnesty claims. They allege that these prisoners pose dash threats to the security of their countries. So dash threats, we need an adjective here. Which of these words it can be? Exhibited, graded, maybe graded, or genuine. What makes sense is genuine. That real threats. The governments, they say that these people, they pose real threats. So, or genuine threats. That's why they need to be imprisoned. The next blank. The concept of prisoners of conscience became a controversy around Nelson Mandela's dash in South Africa, 1964. So something to tell us about Nelson, related to Nelson Mandela in South Africa. So what was that? Inclination, modification, percentage? No, it was imprisonment. And we are, if you look at the overall context, you already know that we are talking about prisoners and unjust imprisonment. So the word here is imprisonment. Let's look at the last blank. The overwhelming majority decided to maintain the basic rule that prisoners of conscience are those who have not used or dash violence. So we need a verb here. Again, this is something related to the policy. The prisoners of conscience are those who have not used. So basic rule or policy. And what does it state? That prisoners of conscience are those who have not used or advocated violence. So people who use, they are in favor of violence. And the word similar in meaning is advocated, to support. So they use and support. So that's why advocated is the word here. And if you look at the other options, diminished, inspected, featured, they don't really make any sense. isn't it? So that's why we will go ahead with advocated. Here are the answers. If you want, you can just pause and try to understand again why these are the correct answers. Let's go to the next question. First, we will skim through. So, removing illegal dumpers, reasons for improperly disposing of waste is an option for dash bodies offenders. Dump, legal disposal. Cities must ensure dash of waste disposal. So, I'll just read till there. This is about waste disposal and how the cities and the governments handle and what they can do, what they should do around that. So, something related to that. Now let's look at the first. First one is also an option for dash bodies. We need an adjective here to describe what type of bodies, and the correct word is governing bodies. You can say political bodies or philosophical bodies, but here this topic is about administration, about doing something in an area. And the next sentence, the next couple of sentences, they do refer to cities. So that's why what makes sense is governing bodies. Let's look at the next one. If free and subsidized programs are not feasible due to funding limitations, cities must ensure dash of waste disposal services. So cities must ensure what we need noun here. So the option is affordability. The cities must ensure affordability because it goes with, as they're saying, their funding limitations. Free and subsidized programs are not possible. So means if we can't give them free, at least the cities must ensure that people can afford them. The next blank, giving fines or assigning liability for cleanup costs to those caught illegally disposing of waste can also act as a fine acts as what? So what does a fine do? It prevents people from doing something, it scares them, or it acts as a deterrent. So deterrent is the word here, something that discourages or people from doing that thing. So if there's a fine people have to do, then they'll be discouraged. And the word similar in meaning is deterrent. Let's look at the last option, offering similar accommodations for commercial and dash waste. So now again, we need an adjective. So waste, one type is commercial. Which of these options can indicate another type of waste? So there's nothing like a comical waste, contextual waste, inflated waste, industrial waste, the waste coming out of industries. So the correct option is industrial. Here are the options. You can have a look. And let's go to the next question. Skimming. Up until quite recently, it has been difficult to determine what constitutes good evidence-based literacy instruction for students with intellectual disabilities, difficulties due to one suggested students with these disabilities. Okay, so the text is about intellectual disabilities and for students with intellectual disabilities and the issues with literacy instruction for them and what are the things being suggested, what are the concerns around that. So let's look at the first blank. Up until quite recently, it has been difficult to determine what constitutes good evidence-based literacy instruction for students with intellectual disabilities and dash disabilities. So one type is intellectual disabilities. What can be another type? We need an adjective. Draft disabilities, export, expensive. Nah, it is developmental disabilities. It describes disabilities that affect growth and development. So that's the option. The next one, further, conventional dash, one suggested that students with these disabilities might need. Okay. So conventional, what we need a noun here, and it's wisdom. So conventional wisdom, that's the type of wisdom. So conventional wisdom is something which is accepted or a belief held by society or group. So it's a convention that students with intellectual and development disabilities might need different instruction. So what type of different instruction? And that's what we have to see. So an adverb here. So the instruction is different. And what type of difference? So that is a qualitative difference. Might need qualitative different or qualitatively. So we say qualitatively because we are talking about a quality. So might need qualitatively different instructions than their peers without disability labels. The next one, it makes sense though that on some level, the same type of high quality instruction that works with other dash students. So we need an adjective. Which of these can be recovering students, spherical students, struggling students? I think struggling students make the most sense because we are talking about, it's an adjective. It tells us the type of students. And then we are also talking about the problems they are facing. That's why the correct option is struggling students. So here are all your answers. Let's look at the final question now. The automating parsing of textual corpora has enabled the extraction of actors and their networks on a vast scale, turning textual data into network data, network theory to identify actors, communities, parties, structural overall network or centrality of certain nodes, this automated approach. Okay, so it talks about some kind of a technique, so technology that reads and parses text and gathers relations out of that between the different entities identified into the text. It's something around that technology and its impacts. Now let's look at the first blank. The automatic parsing of textual corpora has enabled the extraction of actors and their dash networks on a vast scale. We need networks a noun, so we need an adjective here. What type of these words can define a type of networks? Advocate networks, relational networks, retainer networks, compensatory. I think relational is the correct choice as it describes networks based on the relationships or connections between actors. If you later on see, they talk about network, they talk about actors, about different nodes, etc. So it tells us the type of network that we are talking about. Is it related to relationals or it's relational network? The next blank, general properties such as robustness or structural dash of the overall network or centrality of certain nodes. So we need structural what? We need a noun to describe a characteristic or quality of the network here. Stability, right? So stability of the network. So structural stability. And if you combine the other words, structural occupancy, structural inclination, structural inhibition, they do not make sense, but structural stability. When we talk about a structure, we talk about how stable that structure is. And also, it goes hand in hand with robustness. Robustness or structural stability, they go together. Now, let's look at the next. Content analysis has been a dash part of social sciences and media studies for a long time. So, pay attention, long time. So, we again need an adjective, a domestic part, a highlighted part, a visionary part, a traditional part. So, all of these, they can be adjectives. But traditional here, because we are talking about a long time. So that's why traditional makes more sense. So we go with traditional. The next, gender bias, dash, content similarity, reader preferences, and even mood have been analyzed. So gender bias and one other thing and content similarity. So what can be something that can be analyzed? Reading, readiness, readability, readable. So readability. Because it also tells us an aspect of the text that has been analyzed. So it refers to the quality. That text is easy or enjoyable to read or how much it can be read, because they're also talking about mood and these things. Quality here is only readability, not the other words. And the next one, and even mood have been analyzed based on text dash methods. So you need, which of these words can be a method? So text mining methods. Some of you would have heard these words used together, data mining, text mining. So that's where this comes from. So you mine data from the documents and that is text mining. And here, that's our correct option.